What's up, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. Happy NFL game day. Cowboys, Buccaneers, Thursday night football. Absolutely cannot wait. But before we get there, thank you so much for joining me. We've got a lot to discuss today. And I want to go over, I went over the other day my bold prediction that, the Packers would lose in the Super Bowl. I went over, some of the potential downfalls of this Packers team that would potentially, lead them to maybe coming up short in the Super Bowl. Well, let's kick this off right with the pathways or the keys, if you will, for the Packers to actually win the Super Bowl. So some of these are going to be rather obvious at the beginning, but if I left them off, you would be all in my mentions saying, yeah, well, what about injuries, Andy? Well, of course. And so I'm going to start off with my 12 keys to the Packers winning the Super Bowl this season. And not all of these probably need to come true, but if these 12 I feel pretty confident about their odds and their chances this upcoming season. Let's just start off by saying this is a very talented football team that absolutely should be in the conversation for obviously a playoff berth, winning the division. They should be a double-digit win team unless there's catastrophic injuries and things like that. And I have every expectation that this is a team that's going to compete, or be in the conversation as a team that could win the Super Bowl when all is said and done. So we'll see what that journey brings this upcoming season, but let's kick it off. The 12 things, the 12 keys to the Packers winning a Super Bowl and hoisting a Lombardi and returning it to 1265 this upcoming season. So number one is the very cliche injuries, right? Let's be real. The 49ers and the Eagles last year, even the Cowboys to some extent, those teams legitimately had no shot just based on the injuries that they suffered. And there's other ones as well. But like the Eagles, completely decimated along the offensive line. They had numerous injuries throughout their team. The 49ers lose their quarterback. They have injuries up and down their roster. The Cowboys lose their quarterback. Injuries, again, all along the offensive line. Like there were some teams that just plain and simple got taken out due to injuries. Like there was just no way that they were going to compete because the injury, the random injury hit the wrong people, right? Everyone's going to have their stack of 10 to 15 guys on the IR, and it's almost like this big roulette wheel. Like every guy that goes out, you're just hoping it's not Aaron Rodgers, it's not Devontae Adams, it's not Jair Alexander. And I'm not saying that I want anyone to get hurt because obviously I don't, but you're a little bit more thankful when that whammy doesn't land on one of your star players, and that goes for any team, right? It's a war of attrition every single year, and it sometimes it lands on the wrong team at the wrong time, and their team is just decimated. So number one, very clear, very easy on this list, is that you've got to stay healthy, and the injuries cannot affect the core players on your team, because if they do, it just puts you so behind the eight ball. Number two is a little bit of luck. I think if you look at any Super Bowl winning team and any NBA championship, any Major League Baseball championship, like at some point throughout the course of it, you get a little bit lucky. I think the Packers having to go or not go on the road against the Saints and play in Jacksonville instead, there's a little bit of luck there, right? And I'm certainly not making light of the situation as to why that game was moved. Obviously, there's a lot of devastation in the New Orleans area, so I'm not certainly celebrating in that, but there is a bit of football luck in the fact that Green Bay doesn't have to play in the Superdome and don't have to play against a very loud and raucous crowd, and instead will likely have what will probably sound like a home field advantage, and Aaron Rodgers, once again, will probably have his full cadence at his disposal. That's a lucky break in week one, and sometimes those things throughout the course of the season can help you, and other times you can get unlucky. Like the Saints are unlucky that some of their home games are not going to be at home to start the season. They're displaced right now, I believe practicing in the Texas area. That makes things a whole heck of a lot harder on the Saints to open the season. So we'll see what comes of that, but I think, again, at some point, look at the Bucs last year, right? Not taking anything, I'm talking about the Milwaukee Bucks here, not taking anything away from the Milwaukee Bucks, but no Kyrie Irving and no James Harden for certain games in that Nets-Bucks series. Certainly a little bit of luck in their favor. No Trae Young a little bit in the Atlanta series. Again, no apologies made. Dante DiVincenzo missed a lot of games. Giannis missed some games. Nobody's apologizing for anything, but certainly they got a little luck along the way, and that certainly helps when you're trying to be a championship contender. Number three, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. And I'm not saying he has to be the MVP of the league, because I think that's always like an absurd, you can't just go into into any season being like, that guy's going to be the MVP. That's a tough thing to do. But I think at least in that conversation, right? I think if Aaron Rodgers from a few years ago, and he, even said, his down years are still most quarterbacks' really good years, which is 100% a true story. But if you look at some of those Aaron Rodgers down years, that same Aaron Rodgers didn't just automatically win you football games. There was some disconnect there, right? And some of that was offensive line issues, some of that was weapons issues, some of that was Mike McCarthy issues. There was a lot that went into that, but that wasn't the same Aaron Rodgers we saw in previous MVP iterations. It certainly wasn't the Aaron Rodgers we saw last year. Even the Aaron Rodgers in 2019, not quite what we saw in 2020. 2020 Aaron Rodgers gives you a puncher's chance to win a Super Bowl every single season. And if that Aaron Rodgers shows up, you have the ability to win it. If 2019 even Aaron Rodgers or some of those later McCarthy year Aaron Rodgers shows up, then you have to have a lot more heavy lifting from some of the other players on your team just to make up for that Herculean difference, because Rodgers makes so many things tick on his own when he's in that zone and just Aaron Rodgers, right? So I think that still is a key here, is that there's no regression or major issues with Rodgers, and he continues to throw on time with anticipation, with accuracy, and just be the Aaron Rodgers we've all expected him to be throughout the course of his career, and certainly going back to a season ago. Number 4, and I've made mention of this group numerous times on this show, on the audio podcast, it's the front 4, and specifically the pass rush on passing downs. That means Za'Darius Smith, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, maybe a little bit of Kingsley Keke. That group needs to rush the passer at a very high level. There's no excuse not to. Preston and Z are two of the highest paid edge rushers. Rashawn Gary, number 12 pick. Kenny Clark, one of the highest paid interior defensive linemen. And they are all very good football players. And we saw in 2019, even without Rashawn Gary, literally just Preston Smith, Za'Darius Smith, and Kenny Clark. And even at the end of that season, Preston was still starting to wane off a little bit. Even just high-end Kenny Clark and Za'Darius Smith were completely wrecking teams. And we saw Preston Smith play really well towards the first 10-ish games of 2019. We saw Rashawn Gary put together a really nice finish to the end of last season. If you can get that group clicking together at the same time, especially come playoff time, and Z is looking like unstoppable Z, and Preston looks like a really nice pass rusher, Rashawn Gary looks like a good pass rusher, Kenny Clark's getting pressure from the inside, that completely changes everything for the entire dynamic of this team. Those 4 getting to the quarterback at a high level changes everything for the linebackers, it changes everything for the corners, it changes everything for the safeties, it makes all of their jobs easier. Now they're getting off the field, the Packers are getting the ball with better field position, more time on the clock. Aaron Rodgers has more time to work with, again, better field position. That is a recipe for success. If that group starts playing at the level that they should be capable of, you can look, from a mediocre to maybe even bad defense to a top 10 defense with a lot of opportunity to pressure and get to the quarterback. That front has got to be really good in order for this to be what I would consider a very dominant team. Number 5 is that I think you do have to hope a little bit that the league hasn't caught up to this Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur style offense. And I don't think it has, and I don't think we're going to see that, but you're seeing more and more offenses. Arthur Smith is doing a version of this now in Atlanta. The Titans are doing a version of this. Sean McVay is doing a version of this. And there's little, differences here and there with the 49ers, the Packers, and the lists go on. But as more and more teams adopt this style, defense, if there's only a few teams running it, defenses can't just prepare for that style offense week in and week out. It's a unique offense that you have to specifically prepare against. But as we see more and more teams going to this, defenses are becoming more well-rounded and well-versed in how to stop that specific style of offense. And all of a sudden the defenses catch up to it. And then an offense, somewhere else will do something else. And then, everyone tries to copy that, and so on and so forth. It's a very cyclical league, and everyone's trying to always stay ahead. And I think this iteration of Matt LaFleur's offense, because it is a mixture of what Aaron Rodgers likes to do from his McCarthy days, from Nathaniel Hackett's West Coast offense, from Matt LaFleur's Kyle Shanahan offense, I think when you combine all of that, you have this really unique, fun offense with a ton of variety and a ton of creativity. So I think they're going to stay ahead of the curve. But if, again, all of a sudden defenses start catching up to that, and maybe Green Bay's not catching as many teams off guard with some of their concepts, that could be something that they would certainly have to overcome. Again, I don't expect it, but it's something to keep an eye on. Number 6 is the Packers' rookie and sophomore classes. And I think you look at the interior of the offensive line with Josh Myers, certainly with Royce Newman, potentially John Runyon Jr. if injuries hit, getting some playing time. That is a group of freshmen and sophomores who are going to need to really play at a high level. You know, Eric Stokes is going to get some playing time. There's a variety of players. A.J. Dillon, like Josiah DeGuara. You need this freshman and sophomore class for the Packers to really step up and start playing good football now. This isn't a team that can wait for these guys. This is the year. And again, Green Bay maybe has the ability to get back, even with maybe some of the players on this team gone. They have young talent on this team at numerous positions, but this is the year that they are trying to, desperately to win it, and then probably do a little bit of a rehaul next year. They don't have time for these freshmen and sophomores or rookies and second-year players to develop. They need these guys to be good now. So I think that is another key to their success this upcoming season. Number 7, who's this year's Bobby Tonyan? Bobby Tonyan took such a huge step in his development a season ago, and Green Bay went from really having no viable receiving option at tight end to having maybe phenomenal strong, but a really good tight end in Bobby Tonyan who can do a little bit of everything. He improved in his blocking. He took a huge step as a as a receiving tight end. That changed so much, especially in the red zone and how many touchdowns Tonyan caught. That was a big game changer for the Packers offense a season ago. Who is that guy this year? They need another player to step up in a similar way. Maybe an MVS on the outside, who I still think took a step last year, but again was inconsistent. Can he be consistent? Can he be that guy that takes a major step this year for that offense? Can Josiah DeGuara take a major step as that H-back, fullback, tight end sort of position? Can Kingsley Keke take a really big jump on the defensive line, get more pressure, hold up better at the point of attack in the running game? Can a guy like Devondre Campbell break out even at this point in his career and really play some of the best football? All the talent is there. Maybe he found the right scheme. Chris Barnes, like the list goes on. There's plenty of options, but Green Bay could really use another Robert Tonyan style breakout season. Number 8, I think, is one of the biggest ones on this list. Green Bay has to find a defensive identity. That could be bend but don't break, and that really works. They don't really break, and they hold teams to field goals and make them go the length of the field. That could be, getting turnovers in bunches. That could be getting a ton of pressure with creative blitz schemes and just the guys getting home up front. I don't care what it is. They have to find some sort of defensive identity. What is it that you do well? Last year, they never really found that. They weren't pressuring great. They weren't getting a ton of turnovers. The turnovers came in bunches a little bit, but it wasn't consistent. They tried bend but don't break, but it was ended up being just bending a lot and then breaking at the end, where you were giving up 8-9 minute drives and you were giving up touchdowns, which is the worst of all worlds. So they just have to find something. They have to figure out what their thing is, and they have to be really, really good at that. And hopefully it's a bit of, maybe everything. Maybe they, get really good at red zone defense. Maybe they get turnovers. Maybe they get pressures. You would love all of it, but find something that they can hang their hat on and be really good at. If they can find that defensive identity with what is expected to be a super high-powered offense, I think, again, this team has a really great opportunity to compete for and win a Super Bowl. Number 9 is they need to find this year's Andre Rison, Howard Green, PJ Tucker, whatever player you want to insert here. Those championship teams in Wisconsin, the 96 Packers with Andre Rison, the 2010 Packers with Howard Green, the last year's Milwaukee Bucks team with PJ Tucker, they all found a guy that really helped them somewhere in the middle of the season that came up huge in the postseason with a play here or there. And this team is probably no different, right? As much as the players and coaches need to have really strong seasons if you want to win a Super Bowl, the scouting staff and the GM need to as well. And they need to find hidden gems. As you start seeing these guys go out with injuries and you need to fill your roster, you need to find a hidden gem or two that can come in and help your team. I thought Brian Gutekunst was very creative in finding Tramon Williams and Jared Valdir, and finding creative ways to get them on the roster last season. It didn't end up working out in the end, but I think those are the sort of things that you have to keep your mind open to. I think Brian Gutekunst is really good at that, but you probably need to find a guy like that that's going to help your team, because the 53 that's on the roster right now is not going to be the same 53 come playoff time. There's going to be 10, 12 of those guys that are probably on the injured list in some capacity, because that's just what the NFL season does to you. Number 10, competent special teams. Doesn't have to be great. Doesn't have to be really good. Doesn't even probably have to be good. Just competent. Just not giving up huge returns, not having fumbles, not having turnovers, not having block kicks, not having missed easy field goals, not having missed extra points, just competence. Make your extra points, make your makeable field goals at a, relatively consistent level. Don't, no shanks on punts, no huge returns. I'm not asking you to have huge returns of your own. I'm not asking you to block the other team's punts. I'm not asking you to block the other team's kicks. Just have a level of competence and make this a game that's between your offense and your defense, and try to leave the special teams out of it as much as possible. You can do that. You certainly are taking a huge step up from what the special teams was a season ago. Number 11 is no major regression, right? I think last season we saw some regression, certainly from Preston Smith. Even Za'Darius and Kenny Clark had some regression from where they were at in 2019. I'm sure, Chandon Sullivan from 2019 to 2020 saw some regression. Like there were some players that regressed from 2019 to 2020. And if they hadn't, I think Green Bay is probably playing for and maybe even winning a Super Bowl. So this year, you've got to have your core guys playing like your core guys, and you can't have somebody just not holding up their end of the bargain, and very much how Preston Smith didn't a season ago. So I think not only do we need some progression, like we talked about before, but the Packers need to avoid any regression as well. And finally, last but not least, as I talk about all the time, at some point this season, they're going to have to overcome adversity. Maybe it's the NFC Championship again, and they're down 10 points, and they need to figure out a way to overcome it. Something they haven't done well, coming down from behind in either San Francisco or against Tampa Bay in the last two NFC Championships. Maybe they have to travel on the road to San Francisco again. There's going to be something. Maybe it's another David Bakhtiari style injury in the playoffs. There's going to be at some point some adversity that they have to overcome, and if they overcome it, probably going to be looking at a championship type season. If they can't overcome it, they're probably going to be falling short again. So those are my 12 keys to the Packers' success this season, and hopefully ending with a Lombardi Trophy back here at Lambeau Field in Green Bay. We will see if it happens. I can't wait for it to kick off. That's going to do it for me today. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I will be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.